Elon Musk is going to go down in history as the first billionaire to be radicalized by his own social media platform. He is. It's not even up for debate anymore. Should we talk a bit about Elon?
Now, for the second day in a row, the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, has been criticizing the Prime Minister on his social media platform X.
So, Musk has once again commandeered the headlines this week with his incessant, ill-informed idiocy. This most recent iteration of it began yesterday when the world's least favorite African American is, probably what we could call him, isn't it? If that's not too problematic. He's South African, so he's, but he's in America. He's an African. Does that work? It began yesterday when the world's least favorite African American appeared to have watched a Tommy Robinson documentary about Muslim grooming gangs, kidnapping young white girls, or predominantly white girls, doing lots of horrible things to them, and supposedly escaping justice because the police were too scared to do anything for fanning the flames of racial insensitivity. That is the core of the Tommy Robinson thing, and has been for the last few years. Basically what he does, if you're unfamiliar, if you didn't, I think we did an episode about this before, right? I remember talking about Tommy two names. But that's his shtick, right? Is he turns up outside courts, he pretends to be a journalist, except the things that he's reporting, they are sometimes said to be prejudicial in the judicial sense. There's a high likelihood that what he's talking about should be kept within the four walls of the courtroom. So there's a chance that the proceedings may be skewered if he talks about this stuff openly. So he's breaking the law, right? Perversion of justice, disrupting the court process. So whatever the charge is called, that's what he's getting arrested for again and again. And then when he does get arrested, he pretends that he's being silenced. Do you see? That's the con right there. That's the grift. So he says he's being silenced, free speech, journalism is not a crime, all across his t-shirt, all of that stuff. And then he asks people for money. Guys, see right there. You get all the context. Now I need your cash, guys. If you care about free speech, about, fighting back against cover-ups, restricting my right to tell you the truth, then just put your credit card details into this. You're a diamond. Oh, thank you so much. You've done your bit, son. That's his vibe, people. Now, there are reports out there, should you wish to go and find them and read them. There are reports, suggestions, allegations. People, don't know if they're true or not. Who could say? Allegations, allegedly, reportedly, etc., etc. That his legal fees money actually goes on drugs and booze. Which, look, I'm not going to judge. If you got the money and you love getting a bit fucked up, spool back to my 20s. I get it. I understand it. Nobody in this cabin is going to attempt to chastise another human being. Like, do you really think you need all those drugs and booze? That's not... I'm in no position to preach. I'm just saying what has been suggested out there. Should you be tempted to put your credit card number into his input thing? Should you be tempted to protect free speech, fight back against censorship and government cover-ups, etc., etc.? I'm just saying. There have been allegations that perhaps, maybe, some of that money, treading very carefully here. You should see my feet right now. I am tiptoe ballerinaing around libel law here. There have been suggestions that some of that money may have gone on a couple of cheeky bags, son. Couple of bags. Get on it. Right now, we are focusing on the fact that he's made this documentary. It's called Silenced, of course it is. And this documentary allegedly contained some false and defamatory stuff in it about a Syrian then teenage boy. So false and defamatory, according to some people. It was financed by InfoWars. If you wanted to slap a label of credibility on it, who were themselves shut down for false and defamatory content. Like this Silence documentary, right? Basically, it is celebrated by the worst people you could imagine. And it is dismissed and derided by people that I hope that you might trust, right? So people like Hope Not Hate, for example, right? So, armed with this information of who has financed it, who is presenting it, who's promoting it, all of that stuff, the fact Robinson was accused of being one of the main sharers of the theory that the Southport stabbings were the work of some Muslim asylum seeker, they weren't. Armed with all of that information, you would think that Musk might think twice about sharing his nonsense, wouldn't you? Particularly as Musk himself got into hot water only a few months ago, right, for sharing that doctored Telegraph article about Keir Starmer supposedly sending dissidents off to Argentinian camps. But no, on this occasion, and probably many others to come, Musk just shrugged, blindly believed the, GB News powered, EDL flavored nonsense, just blindly took it as fact and retweeted it and just pushed it out, right? He retweeted Robinson's documentary on New Year's Day at 1 a.m. 1 in the morning on New Year's Day. Do you have any idea how tragic that is? So he tweets it out and he says, this is worth a watch. So just, can we put a pin in that for a second? If you thought my life, staying in on New Year's Eve and in bed by like 9:30, 10 o'clock, that's on a riotous day. That's on a wild night for me if I stay up past 10. If you thought that life was sad, spare a thought for the billionaire owner of Twitter who spent his New Year's Eve watching Tommy Robinson videos telling Brits that a documentary that was seemingly so unreliable and littered with libel and defamation that it's landed its producer and presenter behind bars. Musk spent his New Year's Eve telling the 17 people who aren't bots and are still on Twitter that, yeah, this is pretty good, You should give this a watch. This is totally worth a watch. That's how he spent his New Year's. Guys. I've said this before and I will say it again. Elon Musk is going to go down in history as the first billionaire to be radicalized by his own social media platform. It's not even up for debate anymore. And so he puts this stuff out and, people start attacking him. They're like, honestly, like, because they see him quote tweeting Tommy Robinson and then they clap back. They reply back to him. People with brains, people with sense. And they say, honestly, mate, this guy, Tommy Robinson, I don't know how much you know about him, but he is a walking hate crime. Is what they call him. To Elon. They're like, what the fuck are you playing at? Like I was with you when you were trying to solve the world's problems. Elon, I was with you for, get us onto electric cars, get us off of petrol. That made sense. Boring down under the earth to develop these tunnels to alleviate traffic because that's where so many emissions come from. That made sense, Elon. Brain implants to help us think better and think faster. That made sense too. Even the really wacky stuff, the migration to Mars. Occupy another planet. I was like, well, you know what? If you could solve traffic, if you could get us off oil, if you could do brain implants, turn us into super thinking cyber, hell, maybe he can move us to a different planet. Maybe that is the solution. I'm with you, bruv. I was with you through all of that, Elon. But this is, aligning yourself with racists feels like a step backwards from that. I'm going to be honest with you. So he gets a bit of flack, and fuck me, has he doubled down. Guys, his entire feed of the last, I've just got like a couple of tweets up on the screen here. His entire feed from the last 24 hours is just hysterics. It's like full-on breakdown. Every retweet, every quote tweet, replying back to stuff all about Britain, all about Muslim grooming gangs, retweeting this, supporting Tommy Robinson. Absolute insanity. He's like, he says, Starmer was complicit in the rape of Britain when he was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service for 6 years. Starmer must go and he must face charges for his complicity in the worst mass crime in the history of Britain, he says. I mean, it is bad. It is. I said this on the paper review this morning. Like, it's something that needs more answers. It probably needs further investigation. I read earlier he's asked the king to dissolve parliament. It's like the king needs to get rid of this government. There should be a new election, and it's the same thing as the Starmer let off Jimmy Savile thing, right? It is conspiracy theory. It is at best somebody who is hugely misinformed. Yes, he was the head of the CPS. That is true. No, he doesn't or would not have had knowledge of every individual case. That is fucking stupid. I mean, you would think a CEO would understand that. Like when you got CEO up here, they're talking about global strategy. They're talking about ways of doing things, meeting people from different countries that do similar things to thrash out ideas. They're talking about contracts, supply chains. They're not involved in the minutiae of the individual things of which they're lead. Do you understand? It's strategic. It's global. So, I don't know. Should he take responsibility for some of this stuff, as a figurehead? Probably, yeah. To some extent, maybe. But I do think it's interesting, when Elon himself was asked,
doesn't the buck stop with you?
If the buck stops with him with regards to whether Twitter fails or not. Like after the buyout, when things were starting to crumble, the moderation thing imploded. There was talk of like how it's lost 75% of its value. Journalist by the name of Don Lemon, a former CNN guy, he left CNN and he got a job as a journalist for X, right? Because they had Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson comes over and starts doing his show like live on X. So Don Lemon becomes an X journalist. And he asks Elon Musk in his interview, he says like, if Twitter fails, if it fails, you say it will be the fault of the advertisers for leaving it. You say it will be the fault of the users who have deserted it. You say it's the fault of the blah, blah, blah. He's like, but as the CEO, as the owner, as the person who went, doesn't the buck stop with you?
Doesn't the buck stop with you?
Right, which I think is a fair question, right? And Elon Musk obviously thinks it's a fair question because he thinks that the buck for Jimmy Savile and now this Rotherham grooming scandal thing, he thinks that the buck stops with Keir Starmer. But yet, when it's tabled to him in exactly the same way...
Doesn't the buck stop with you?
Choose your question carefully. There's 5 minutes left.
It's like, no. That does, no. In fact, he fired Don Lemon for even asking the question. That's how seriously he thinks the buck doesn't or should not stop with him.
I think it was just uncomfortable for him to sit in front of someone and actually...
even though his decisions, Elon Musk's decisions, would have directly ruined and killed that platform. The buck doesn't stop with Elon Musk, even when a problem is directly attributable to him. But it does stop with Starmer, even when he personally had no input whatsoever into these cases.
Just